Jacob Chansley, also known as the QAnon Shaman, was just sentenced to 41 months in prison in yet another political prosecution taking place in these United States of America. In this video, we're going to review the entire ordeal. We're going to take a look at the sentencing proceeding that took place in court with Judge Royce C. Lamberth. We're going to read what Jacob Chansley had to say during the sentencing proceeding. We're going to listen to Chansley's lawyer, guy's name is Albert Watkins, discuss the results of this case with the media, and then we're going to compare Jacob Chansley's case with some of the other January 6 defendants and see if maybe he got a little bit of an extra harsh deal. My name is Robert Gruler. I'm a criminal defense lawyer here at the R&R Law Group. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona, and today we're talking about Jacob Chansley. We're starting off with the Justice Department press release, which we see here is posted, released November 17, 2021, says that an Arizona man sentenced to 41 months in prison on a felony charge in a January 6 Capitol breach. A little bit different that we have a felony here he pled guilty to. If you've been following our channel, many of the other cases we've covered, the plea deals have been down to misdemeanors, and so Jacob Chansley is sort of at a higher category of offense. Let's go through this. It says Jacob Chansley occupied the vice president's seat in the Senate chamber and used the bullhorn to lead rioters to in an incantation. His real name is Jake Angeli, 34, Phoenix, Arizona, which is where we're at, was sentenced today 41 months in prison. Back during January 6, he disrupted a joint session of Congress. We know all of that. He was among the first of the 30 rioters actually in the building. And he was wearing a Viking hat, carrying a 6-foot spear, which, of course, is, I think, a requisite now before you seize control of a country. According to court documents, Chansley was among the crowd that passed the police line at the west front of the U.S. Capitol. He was shirtless, wearing a Viking hat with fur and horns, covered in red, white, and blue face paint, carrying an American flag. Sharp object at the tip tied to the flagpole. He and others in the crowd passed police lines, entered into scaffolding, entered the Upper West building, 2:10 p.m. Chansley continued into the building through a broken door, kept moving, went into the Senate dais, taking a seat on the Vice President Mike Pence occupied hours earlier. Take pictures of himself, shouted, "Mike Pence is a traitor," and wrote on the note that it's only a matter of time, justice is coming. He was cleared from the chamber at about 3:09 p.m. So he's in there from, sounds like about 2:40 p.m. to 3:09 p.m. So about every 15 minutes is like another, year in prison, I guess, if you want to run the numbers that way. Justice Department continues, says that he was arrested January 9th, been in custody ever since. We're going to learn more about that from the rest of this case. He's been in solitary confinement under COVID precautions. He pled guilty in D.C. September 3rd to obstruction of an official proceeding, which is a felony, as we mentioned previously. In addition to the prison term, he's got $2,000 in restitution, must serve a period of 3 years of supervised release following the completion of his prison term. So about 3.5 years in prison, and then 3 years of supervised release after that time. The U.S. Attorney's Office and other people are really appreciative of FBI playing Where's Waldo and identifying all these people. More than 675 individuals, they say, have been arrested in nearly all 50 states for crimes, and the investigation remains ongoing. And so, the FBI, they've got a lot more photographs and highlighters. They have to go find all these individuals in their big photographs of all the different faces playing Where's Waldo on a regular basis. Let's listen into this fella. This gentleman is named Pete Williams. Now, he's an NBC justice correspondent, and what's difficult with federal cases is that they don't allow cameras in there, and you can't record any of this stuff and replay it. So all of this needs to be sort of observed from people who were in the courtroom or people that were able to watch a feed that they were authorized to take notes on. But you can't call into courts, generally speaking, and record the audio, or like we saw in the Chauvin trial, or like we just saw in the Rittenhouse trial, you can't actually have actual video photograph in most federal cases. I think there may have been some exceptions to that, but as a general rule, that's how it works. So Pete Williams is now going to be giving us some insider details about what he saw from the sentencing proceeding involving Jacob Chansley. Here he is.
Walk us through this sentencing and what message this sends, what precedent this sends as we watch other cases play out.
Well, this is one of the harshest sentences yet. It matches a sentence that was handed down just recently for a man who struck a Capitol policeman in the face And his lawyers had said before
Violence.
the judge pronounced sentencing that Jacob Chansley is somebody who is a changed man, that he now knows that he suffers from a mental disorder that was diagnosed by the Navy, but he was never told about it, a serious personality disorder that can cause bizarre behavior and social problems. And for that reason, the defense lawyer said he shouldn't be sentenced to much more than the 317 days that he's already spent incarceration in mostly solitary confinement because of COVID in the Alexandria jail. The prosecutors had asked for a sentence of 51 months. The sentencing guidelines for this offense are 41 to 51 months, and it's the low end that the judge, Royce Lamberth, sentenced him for.
Walk us through.
So they have a sentencing range, and that is what the judge sentenced him to, the bottom end of the sentencing range. But the issue that you heard Mr. Williams talking about competency and about Jacob Chansley's undiagnosed prior mental conditions were something that, of course, raised eyebrows as this entire case was walking through the legal process. We talked a lot about it here on this channel. Specifically, we're identifying the different competency arguments and the competency hearings that were taking place in Jacob Chansley's case, saying that he was sort of being referred out to make sure that he was actually competent to even know what was happening in this process. And they were doing that analysis back in the middle of this case. Still, even with the knowledge that the Navy had prior knowledge of this, that he has the courts investigating his level of competency, and you can also just take a look at his behavior, right? Sort of abnormal behavior relative to the other people who were there on the January 6th day. So Jacob Chansley is a little bit of an aberration. I think it's pretty obvious from a lot of what we have seen, both there at the time, both in court, and from a prior record with the Navy. And still, he's getting 41 months in prison. We have a little bit more of the details here about what happened today from Politico. You can see this is that infamous image. You know, this image truthfully may have, earned him a harsher sentence just because of the outfit. People all over America saw this, and it really left a mark in the eyes of many people. Sort of, the media puffed this up all over the place, and it almost became a symbolic or a caricature of the entire event. They talk about this. They say his shirtless image in the Senate rostrum and a menacing note to Vice President Mike Pence came to symbolize the January 6th assault. This was the harshest sentence handed down yet in the 10-month prosecution effort. Judge Royce Lamberth allegedly says, according to Politico, "What you did here was horrific," he said as he issued the 41-month sentence, adding that he believed Chansley, a self-described shaman and a follower of the QAnon conspiracy movement, had genuinely come to regret his decisions. Lamberth acknowledged that Chansley had not engaged in physical violence, unlike the other guy, but said his role as a leader among those who went into the Senate, disrupted the electoral vote tally, compelled a serious prison sentence. Judge said, "What you did was terrible. You made yourself the epitome of the riot." This judge was appointed by Ronald Reagan. The judge said, "You didn't slug anybody, but what you did was actually obstruct the functioning of the whole government. It's a serious crime." Did Jacob Chansley do that, really? He disrupted the functioning of the whole government? They were back in there. He was in there for 45 minutes, according to the prior press release that came out from the Justice Department. They went back and tallied up the votes that night and confirmed Joe Biden won the election. So for 45 minutes, 15 minutes a year in prison. All right, we have some more details on what Jacob Chansley was saying today from Pete Williams once again.
But Chansley himself spoke in court today. He said that he fully accepts what he did, that he accepts responsibility, that he's not a violent man, that he's not a white supremacist, that there's no danger that he'll reoffend, and that his time in jail has been a period of discovery for him, coping with his mental problems. His defense lawyer did ask that he be sent to a prison that would be near his parents in Arizona and someplace where he can get continuing mental health treatment.
Politico says after his arrest, one of the first of about 700 connected to the January 6th attack, he was ordered to be held in pretrial detention as a possible flight risk due to his prominence in the QAnon community. While detained, he made headlines, gave an interview with 60 Minutes, earning a rebuke from Lamberth. We talked about that. It did wonders for me after he got organic food because of his religious beliefs. Lamberth noted that his decision to move Chansley away from a D.C. jail to a Virginia jail so he could get a special diet led to some criticism. Judge said I took a lot of flack from that. Lamberth's sentence followed a lengthy in-court appeal from Chansley himself. He said his 317 days in pretrial confinement had, quote, changed him as a person. He learned he suffered from a personality disorder, lamented that he'd become synonymous with the horrors of the attack on the Capitol. Chansley said, "That's a lot of bad juju that I never meant to create. My shamanic attire is designed to ward off evil spirits, not to scare people." In court on Wednesday, Chansley wore a green drab jail jumpsuit. Head was clean-shaven, sported a beard. Only sign of the jarring image he was struck on January 6th were large tattoos visible on the arms. Standing at the courtroom behind the lectern, without his attorney, but with the deputy marshal positioned behind him, Chansley quoted Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court judge, and praised Lamberth for his military service. Interesting. So he was sort of giving the judge some kudos. Chansley insisted that he accepted full responsibility, said he's not posing any ongoing threat. "I was wrong for entering the Capitol," he said. "I have no excuse whatsoever. The behavior is indefensible. I'm in no way, shape, or form a dangerous criminal. I am not a violent man," Politico says. "I am not an insurrectionist. I am certainly not a domestic terrorist. I am a good man who broke the law," which is extremely common. Chansley's attorney, Albert Watkins, said his client's mental health issues were identified when he was in the Navy a decade and a half ago, but Chansley was never told of the diagnosis nor given proper treatment. Watkins, his defense lawyer, suggested in passing that some involved in January 6 events had been duped or used or exploited. Last week, Lamberth delivered another 41-month sentence to New Jersey man admitted punching a police officer in the face amidst the riots. Most severe sentence the judge handed out thus far in January 6 cases. More serious charges remain pending. As the court hearing concluded on Wednesday, Lamberth suggested, as he did last week, that remaining defendants in the Capitol riot cases would be wise to plead guilty. He assured Chansley that he would have received more prison time if he had gone to trial rather than accept a plea deal, which is so reprehensible, in my opinion. The judge is presuming that these people are guilty. Now, if they want to go to trial, they can, but you were smart, judge said. It may not feel it today, but I guarantee you were smart. The judge basically imposing a trial tax. If you go to trial and you lose, I'm going to punish you very severely, is kind of what he's hinting at. Now, the judge is also likely talking about the fact that as a result of the plea deal, they are dismissing several other charges, which means that your exposure at trial is much more limited. In other words, if you went to trial and lost on 4 charges, the penalty would be much more severe than if you took a plea deal to 1 charge, pleading guilty, and received a sentence for that 1, dismissing the other 3. So the judge technically can be right in that regard, but when a judge talks like that, he's talking about a trial tax. If you sort of fight this anymore, things could get worse for you. Jacob Chansley, of course, is represented by an attorney, guy by the name of Albert Watkins, says that he is absolutely embracing being held accountable as he is sentenced to 41 months in prison for his role in the 1/6 insurrection. Here is his attorney, Albert
Mr.
Watkins.
Chansley owned his responsibility. He sought to be accountable. He was and has been held accountable. And he is respectful of this court and everyone involved in this case for having put himself in this position. He is absolutely embracing being held accountable. Chansley.
Now, the QAnon Shaman's lawyer, Albert Watkins, of course, is talking about being absolutely accountable, but he's also saying that we've got to be pretty careful about some of this language. Jacob Chansley is not an insurrectionist. He was not somebody who was out there trying to overthrow America. I know a lot of people said that. They said that the guy walking out with the podium, I think, was in charge of the entire nation, but that's not how the country works. And so the idea that he was a part of this armed insurrectionary force that was going to seize control of the entire country is just not accurate. Here is QAnon Shaman Jacob Chansley's lawyer, Albert Watkins, communicating that idea here.
An insurrectionist? Look up the word. Are you going to follow the guy who's naked, tattooed nipples, January, D.C., hours outside with horns, face paint, and a fur, and say, yeah, that's the guy I want. I'm following him. Unless you're smoking crack. But, you know, it's not bad on occasion. But an insurrection.
Jacob Chansley's lawyer says, why would you follow a guy who's wandering around Washington, D.C. in January with no shirt on, tattoos, nipples, something going on with those, in a horn hat with a spear? You got to be smoking crack. Not that there's anything wrong with that on occasion. So we have now the word insurrection, as Mr. Watkins is asking us to take a look at. It says a person who takes part in an armed rebellion against a constituted authority. So if you just look at this definition, I'm pretty sure Jacob Chansley is not really, well, maybe he was. I mean, he had a spear. So I guess it was a rebellion against a constituted authority. So if you think that it was a serious attempt at insurrection, yeah, maybe he'll fit into that category. But crack is whack. Always don't smoke crack. All right, now let's take a look at Jacob Chansley's case relative to the other cases, because 41 months in prison is quite a long time. It kind of seems like a lot for obstructing an official proceeding, or like a criminal trespass charge, or like a disorderly conduct charge, like many other of the January 6 defendants got. We have the United States government at the Department of Justice is giving us some details. They've sort of aggravated a lot of the January 6 cases together, and they tell us that the Capitol breach cases here are all summarized in this nice little table. Let's take a look at it. Here we can see we've got Richard Franklin Barnard, somebody who was charged as a part of the January 6 riots, a number of different charges, and it looks like he's got sentencing scheduled for February, so nothing on that one yet. We have Robert Bauer, this person also entering remaining disorderly conduct, violent entry, disorderly conduct at the Capitol building. Also, what did he get? He was sentenced on October 13th. He got 45 days incarceration, 60 hours community service, $500 in restitution. So probably misdemeanor charges. I haven't taken a deeper dive into those, but 45 days versus 41 months for very similar charges. So it sounds like in a Capitol building. So this person was also in the Capitol building, violent entry, and all of those things. Now, again, not obstruction with official proceedings, which is what Jacob Chansley got, but you can see just the difference. Very similar conduct, 45 days versus 41 months. Also, we have Ryan Bennett. Let's see, similar charges. You can see all of them are going to be, very much the same. Entering, remaining in a restricted building, discon. We've got violent entry, demonstrating or picketing in a Capitol building. What did he get? 2 years probation. The first of 3 months are going to be served at home confinement. So 3 months home detention, 2 years probation for very similar conduct to Jacob Chansley. So basically no jail time at all, unless he actually was arrested and held in custody for some period of time. Donna Sue Bissey, very similar charges, picketing in a Capitol building, demonstrating or picketing there. So she also signed a plea agreement. She's from Indiana, and she got 14 days jail, 60 hours of community service, $500 in restitution. So 14 days versus 41 months. We have Sam Blakely, remains on personal recognizance. So he's going to be sentenced in March of next year. Don't know about that one. We've got another one, James Bonnet. Let's see. Plea agreement. He's not sentenced until 2022. And then we've got another person. Looks like their case is just getting started. Jeremy Brown was just arrested in September. So that's just warming up. And then we have another one, Terry Brown, scheduled for a status conference on 9/10. We've got Scott Benjamin Burlow. He was just indicted in October. This person, Boyd, Alan Camper Boyd, is sentenced for 60 days of incarceration. And again, very similar charges to Jacob Chansley. So 60 days versus 41 months. Another one. The rest of these look like they're all sort of scheduled for future court dates. So we have Leroy Kaufman, that's going to be sentenced in April of next year. Plea agreement was just entered in Carlo Cordone, and sentencing scheduled in 2022 for him. So a lot of these sentencings are scheduled for next year. So that's another political prosecution that wrapped up in the United States. Not going to be the end of them. Many more will come down the pike. We know that. We are already seeing the writing on the walls. Please stick around. Subscribe to our channel to join us as we cover many more of these and continue to watch the Watchers. Thanks for being here.